There are supplements that you should never, ever take. They can be dangerous, or they can just be a flat out waste of money. There are other supplements that you should never, ever take at specific times, but they're okay at other times. So we're gonna go through this in detail. I'm gonna tell you which ones you should avoid, but then I'm also going to tell you when you should take them, because it really does matter what time you take something. It makes a huge, huge difference. So without further ado, let's jump into this first one, which is very interesting. It's the world of antioxidants. So we're talking things like vitamin C, vitamin E, echinacea, all these things that arguably are great, but when they're taken at the wrong time, they can be detrimental. You see, what we have to understand is that antioxidants are heavily marketed to be helpful with your workouts. They're in pre-workouts all the time, they're in post-workout shakes. We're told we should be bombarding our body with them. When muscles contract, okay, you have actin and you have myosin, and what happens is calcium binds to a protein on a muscle cell, okay? And this is a very simple way of explaining it. That binding of calcium to troponin is what allows the contraction of a muscle. What we've seen in some of the literature is that high amounts of oxidative stress can impede the ability for those to bind, thereby reducing your muscle contraction. So that leads us to believe that we should be loading ourselves up with antioxidants because it rids the body of these reactive oxygen species, allowing the muscle to contract. Makes sense, right? Right, but it's wrong. There was a study published in the Journal of Physiology, gave subjects 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C and 235 milligrams of vitamin E daily for 11 weeks. And they did resistance training, they did high intensity interval training, they did endurance training 3 to 4 days per week. Okay, their results overall, as far as performance were concerned, were similar, but when they did muscle biopsies, this is where things got interesting. They found that there was a 19% and a 59% increase in overall mitochondrial biogenesis, muscle adaptation, ability for the muscle to get stronger in the placebo group, and a 13% decrease in these adaptations in the antioxidant vitamin C, vitamin E group. Whoa, so we're talking a 60% improvement by not taking antioxidants. Why? Because we need a certain level of oxidative stress to actually be a signal to the brain to trigger adaptation. Mitochondrial biogenesis, all these things, that is the adaptation. Okay, so don't take antioxidants. Well, no, antioxidants are actually quite powerful and they do have a huge impact. You just do not want to take them pre or post-workout or intra-workout. So look at your pre-workout drinks and make sure that there's not like an antioxidant blend in there because that's detrimental. Now, on race day or competition day or a day where you want to perform better, you might want to consider taking in antioxidants. Just know that you're going to have terrible recovery and not get a good adaptation from it. But it might actually make you perform better. But if you did that every day you trained, you would actually be breaking your body down. As far as days you're not competing, things like that, stack your antioxidants towards the end of the day with meals away from your workouts at least by 3 or 4 hours. Now, for those of you that are wondering, there was another study that took a look at antioxidant supplements versus antioxidant-rich diet, and they found that an antioxidant-rich diet did not have the same negative impact as antioxidant supplements. So your post-workout meal can be rich in berries and polyphenol-rich food, and you're not going to have the same problem as you would with a direct concentrated vitamin C or something like that. Okay, this next one is one that is really, really, really important. And although it's still in somewhat of the exercise workout sphere, I want you to pay attention because it applies anytime your body's under stress, not just necessarily from a workout. That is taking things that are anti-inflammatory. Okay, that's gonna be things like ibuprofen, but in the supplement world, things like coenzyme Q10, PQQ, even turmeric. You don't want these right around periods of time when you're stressed or post-workout. So it's fairly common knowledge that when you work out, you trigger an inflammatory response, okay? IL-6, interleukin-6, is what's really responsible for recovery. If IL-6 goes out of control or is chronically stimulated, it's a problem. What's interesting is a study published in Nature demonstrated that when subjects suppressed IL-6, it decreased the ability to create what's called GLUT4. So by suppressing inflammation, the cells were not able to soak up glucose because GLUT4 is what sucks up glucose into the cell. So thereby glycogen replenishment was diminished, but also just overall recovery was poor and blood sugar could remain high, being metabolically detrimental as well. The other thing we have to remember is that IL-6 is required for muscle growth, for satellite cells, which basically are cells that donate a nuclei to muscle cells to ultimately allow them to fuse and grow. It's complicated, but just take my word for it. Interleukin 6 is important for that. So you don't want to take ibuprofen because it blocks one pathway, the prostaglandin pathway. You don't want to take turmeric. You don't want to take PQQ, coenzyme Q10. You don't want to take hydroxytyrosol. You don't want to take potent anti-inflammatory compounds at all within like a 2-hour window of your workout. If you do take them, you want to make them part of a normal lifestyle routine and have them be with like your lunch or your dinner with a meal, again, 2 or 3 hours away. But one of the things that you may want to consider doing is focusing on the microbiome instead, because the microbiome is going to be one of the larger regulators of the inflammatory response within your body. That way, your body can dictate when inflammation needs to go up and when inflammation needs to be quelled. And the microbiome seems to be playing a critical role in that balance, that homeostasis of inflammation within the body. So one thing you could add in instead of these things is a good probiotic. And I popped a link down below for the one I recommend. You can skip through this section if you don't want to watch, but I definitely recommend this one for people that are trying to change their microbiome. It's called Seed. It's a synbiotic that has a capsule inside of a capsule. So it's uniquely designed to have the prebiotic formula, but also the probiotic, the actual bacterial component in one capsule. So you're getting a multi-stage delivery for potential proper colonization for the microbiome to really get the maximum benefit. So that link down below saves you 15% off if you want to try them out. It's the only probiotic that I actually recommend because a lot of them quite literally belong in the trash. This next one is dangerous. It's dangerous because it is a shortcut that can absolutely mess you up. Now with this, we're talking about iron. Oh, you're tired? You feel weak? You must be anemic. I literally myself can probably think of over 100 other reasons why you're tired. Clinically, there's probably thousands of reasons that I don't know. Why is it that we default to iron? Well, because a lot of times where your iron levels are in one state is not the way they are in another state. Your serum iron levels might be different than your actual stored iron levels and whatnot. So you might not be deficient in iron, you're just having an inability to utilize it, transport it, and get the right kinds of irons. But additionally, I would almost guarantee, now almost guarantee, I'm just a guy on the internet, that if you're iron deficient, you're probably copper deficient. In fact, there was a study published in Journal Nutrition, it was done in mice, but it found that iron deficient mice, more often than not, were actually deficient in copper, which was why they're deficient in iron, because copper aids in the proper absorption of iron. So if you were to take iron supplementation without copper, you actually impede the absorption of iron further. You need copper to increase that absorption. Without copper, iron can't really do its job. So, okay, well, I'll take an iron supplement, but I'll also take a copper supplement. Then you're walking yourself down this very funky line of having to always balance how much copper you're taking in, how much iron you're taking in, because they balance and counterbalance each other. So what am I saying? Well, unless you have severe anemia, you probably don't have a need for an iron supplement. You're getting enough from the diet. Everything is fortified. Most foods have either heme iron or non-heme iron. You're probably fine, but again, I'm just some dude on the internet, so what do I know? The other thing we have to remember why iron can become dangerous is that iron helps us carry oxygen. If you leave iron out in the elements, what happens? It turns rusty, right? Yes. Okay, well, essentially, iron oxidizes very heavily. So when you have high amounts of extra iron, A, it oxidizes, but B, it carries more oxygen. And we think, more oxygen, that means that I'm gonna be doing great things in oxygenating cells. Not quite. More oxygen also means more exposure to the elements, right? So more potential oxygenation and oxidation, leading to higher levels of oxidative stress. There was a study that took a look at 117 anemics, put them on 100 milligrams of iron for 100 days, and they found that it didn't make a whole lot of a change to their iron levels, but it did increase reactive oxygen species and overall total oxidative stress within their body, leading to other damaging things later on down the line. Now, the Archives of Internal Medicine also published a paper looking at correlation between lots of like multivitamins, magnesiums, potassiums, different vitamins, and all of them had interesting correlations with all-cause mortality, but the one that had the strongest correlation with all-cause mortality was iron supplementation. And here's food for thought. It's just theory, but I've heard it talked about before in the medical community. And that's the world that, like, women live longer, right? That's kind of a simply known fact, right? We see that in the epidemiological data that women live longer. Well, women lose blood every month. Perhaps they're getting rid of some of this extra iron that could be a problem. Just noodle on that for a little bit. So what do? I don't know, eat a steak, cook up some spinach, eat some meat, get some iron the natural way, and move your body so that you can actually clear out oxidative stress and develop the ability to deal with it. That's the best solution there. This next one is going to take the cake when it comes down to over-marketed, overpriced BS, candidly. Okay, it's something that we see in muscle building magazines all the time. We see at NutriShop and GNC, and they charge like $50 for a jug of this stuff that probably costs them less than 50 cents to make. We're talking about glutamine. First of all, glutamine as far as a muscle building supplement, that's like quack work. That's a joke. Glutamine is non-essential. Your body can make it. That doesn't mean it's not important, okay, but it does not contribute to muscle synthesis at all. There's a study published in the European Journal of Applied Physiology, took a look at 6 weeks of resistance training with glutamine or placebo. Okay, they found that there was no difference in strength, no difference in total muscle mass, no difference in torque, and really just nothing at all. No difference whatsoever. There's no increase in muscle protein synthesis with glutamine supplementation. There was also no decrease in muscle protein breakdown. So it wasn't preventing you from breaking down muscle during your workout. So it's a waste of money if you're trying to build muscle. That's not going to work. But what about the other side? Okay, as someone that's an endurance athlete myself, I used to think of glutamine as a really powerful thing because it is important for the immune system. It's very important. And when you train hard, specifically with endurance work, you suppress your immune system. It's pretty prevalent and it happens a lot, right? So what do we have to do here? Well, you take glutamine and it fixes the issue. Well, when you look at the data, not the case. Journal of Clinical Nutrition published a paper looking at various papers, and they found that there was pretty much no effect with the immune system with glutamine. There was no change in natural killer cells, no change in B cell function, there was no change in various immunoglobulins, but more importantly, no increase in IgA, immunoglobulin A, which supports gut barrier integrity, supports the mucosal membranes, mucus, all these things that are our first line of defense that supposedly get weakened when we do endurance work. So glutamine is supposed to help us there. Evidently, no dice. As a matter of fact, there was a study published in Parenteral and Enteral Nutrition that demonstrated that long-term glutamine usage could actually impair protein absorption and could impair glutamine synthesis within our body, impairing our body to actually create it itself. So not only is it a waste of money, but it actually could be this issue. It could be an encumbrance later on to your synthesis of protein. So it may not be the best thing to take, and it's definitely a waste of money. Then we have another interesting one. I'm going to rattle off a few more here. Raspberry ketones. They are not ketones. They are literally like nothing. They do nothing. Okay, so don't ever fall into that trap of taking a raspberry ketone because you think it's a ketone supplement, or B, a fat burner. Okay, over 90% of it is excreted in the urine in mammals larger than rabbits. And the larger the animal, the larger the mammal, the more you excrete. So A, you're probably not even getting any in. B, it doesn't really do anything. C, it's actually been demonstrated to increase your glucose by impeding the ability to absorb glucose into the cell. So it's more of a detriment than anything. The next one that's just going to list off quickly here, because I've talked about it in other videos, no need to be taking a calcium supplement. We do not have a calcium problem in this country, especially, United States. Okay? Calcium is excitatory. If anything, it's going to make you more stressed. If anything, it's going to counterbalance magnesium. It's going to cause more of an issue and potentially lead to calcification of the arteries. We don't need to add it in. There are studies, even published by the American Heart Association, that demonstrated that when you add more calcium via supplementation, you increase the risk of calcium in your arteries or calcification, right? So just for cardiovascular disease, no go. Pretty much all fat-burning supplements are a no-go. They're just caffeine. You're gonna get a similar effect by having green tea or having coffee. So just go that route. It's more pleasurable, it's more fun, it's way cheaper, and it probably even works better because you'll be able to afford it for a longer period of time. The only fat burner that I would somewhat recommend is if you're training hard, carnitine can actually be beneficial. Very cheap, and it works very well as far as the molecular science is concerned if you're deficient in carnitine. You become deficient in carnitine when you train hard. So if you're training hard, you might be deficient. A simple, cheap supplementation of carnitine might be a decent fat burner in conjunction with caffeine. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel. I'll see you tomorrow.